And that'll be higher. All right. All right, so here we go. Dawn of the Metal Menace. Metal Menace. There we go. What Prime EG-208 had expected from his datajet connection with the Howler had been some simple but potentially enlightening diagnostic reports. At worst, some corrupted data considering how strange the specs were on this thing. He detected the connection being made and sent the initial signal. The answer back started to trail, though, and the damaged but recognizable header appropriate to the sort of simple system diagnostic he'd requested. And then he learned what happened to Gestalt EG-3014. It should not have been possible. Each individual Gestalt had superior anti-intrusion packages, and in the event those were insufficient, they were still backed by the overall power of the entire distributed Prime network. There should not have been a database attack that could have threatened the integrity of even a single node of that whole. The initial data flow resolved as corrupted, mangled beyond recognition, but the instant he began to unpack it to try to salvage even the slightest bit of data, the connection to the Howler opened fully, and its connection to the Prime network went blank. That was not enough to bring him to panic. What happened next, though? In the span of an instant, even as measured by a machine life form, the Prime who was alone found himself broken into pieces. He shattered, reconverged. He was himself again long enough to experience being shattered again, his mind scattered, reflecting on itself like a kaleidoscope array of mirror shards, parts of a whole, as if he were seeing the universe from 1,000 different angles. Then he was himself again, and again, pieces, shards beyond counting, and he looked into the Howler from 1 billion fractal angles, and what he saw shook him to the core more deeply than the feeling of being shattered. It was like looking into a fragment of the Infinity Codex itself. Like looking into a mirror and seeing himself through a shattered mirror, and in an instant before he shattered again into a new fractal pattern, repeating endlessly, geometric evolutions occurring billions of times per second. It felt like he could understand. The experience ended, and heedless of what he was doing, he screamed, a raw, screeching, electronic noise of incomprehension and horror. Even shattered fragments of his intelligence managed to coalesce to push him away from the Howler, to shoulder past Kaylin, to stagger his way clear from the rundown building into the streets, moving almost blindly. He dragged himself into a shelter of an alley and tried to use the wall to hold himself upright, but the world spun around him and he toppled over with a crash. Are you okay? What happened to you? Prime's optics fuzzed as data streams merged and split apart again into fractal patterns. He managed to turn his head and saw a young woman leaning over him with a look of concern on a face humans would have called pretty. He did not speak for a few moments, but then, his voice stacky, he managed enough coherence for a response. His first response should have been something to assure her concerns. Don't know that word, sorry. Maybe even to request her to make simple contact. that would alert the Prime network of his location. But uncontrolled, unhinged, he blurted out the thought that had occupied his mind since that moment. I believe I've looked upon what you would call the face of God. He who was once Prime looked up at her as he pushed himself to his feet. Strange. He was growing steadier by the moment. That simple statement seemed to recontextualize everything, and new possibilities opened before him, diverging before him in beautiful crystalline patterns. He understood now why Prime could not decipher the Infinity Codex. A voice of one could not hope to create the harmonious voice that could unlock the key to godhood. But among those infinitely branching paths, he could see a way forward that could. It all started here. The ports on his arm that housed his data jack opened, and he turned his head towards the woman, his gaze fixating upon her. Would you like to understand? She did not have time to scream. All right. Yeah, I mean, what Ike says here, this is exactly how I feel. Like, this is very well done. This is very, Doctor Strange being shown magic for the first time. Imagery of what this character sees when it's passing through data it can't comprehend, I feel like is the best way to kind of describe confusion when you're getting ones and zeros and it doesn't make sense, right? Like to see something and I don't know how coding works, but I'm just thinking of it like if code doesn't work, what does that not work look like internally, right? For us, it's just a crash. It's just shit just doesn't work. But if you were to see with this kind of vision, what would that look like? You would see something like, okay, yeah, I see where this code's supposed to go, and then it doesn't fucking work. And here's a crash, and it's branching off. So yeah, that's really cool. It's very weird. And you don't really get anything that's sort of villainous. You don't really feel anything about this character because of what you're just kind of experiencing with them until the very end. And even, I guess this line right here is what makes it like, oh, this is a bad guy. Like, I believe I have looked upon what you would call the face of God. That could be like, oh, yeah, he's just fucking crazy. And then it's like, would you like to understand? Like, well, no. And then she didn't have time to scream. Meaning, she wanted to scream because something happened. And he's fucking crazy. So, yeah. It's pretty good. Good work, Nicholas. So now we're going to do Part 2, Becoming. And this one's a little bit longer, but because I looked at these earlier and I just thought, like, man, this is going to take a couple hours to get through both of these. That was a very easy read for what it was. So here we go. He who had once been Prime did not fully comprehend the urge that the urge that had led him to impale the young woman with the green crystalline lance of his data jack. Something alien to him had affected him, his way of thinking, something that bore a hint of viral familiarity. But even so, completely new in ways that he had never considered possible. And it was still within him, making changes. The data jack was not, as a rule, a lethal weapon. However solid it looked, its form lacked the stabilizer frequency of weapons like his power claws, and it could spear through flesh without damaging it. The only effect on organic tissue was minor, temporary paralysis when the electromagnetic field interfered with the nervous system, and that seemed to be the case here. So did he kill her? I mean, he says he impales her, and impaling generally means that something's dead. Okay. And then, not Prime's nanolith engaged. What is this word? Hold on, time out. The fuck is this word? TH? Sorry guys, I normally don't do this, but this I feel like this is something very important that I should know. Of course it's from Supreme Commander and Total Annihilation. So it's some tool that's the reverse of a 3D processor. Okay. All right. Sure. Sure. All right. So let's see here. Okay. Here we are. And then their nanolith engaged, and the system that was supposed to provide him with limited self-repair and self-modification capabilities began overriding the functions of his data jack. High-frequency beams of shining green light strobed down the length of the crystal, seeming spike that held the young woman's transfixed and unmoving. And he felt a connection where there could not have been one. Caroline had time to open her mouth in preparation for a scream before the sprawled shape in the alleyway surged to its feet and did something. She saw green light reflecting off ghastly skeletal features, and then the world around her seemed to shift. She wasn't herself. She was looking at the steel skeletal face of her own. The steel skeletal face looking at her own face, looking at the steel skeletal face. She was shards of glass. She felt cracks. She felt light prisming through facets of her own mind. She stepped out of herself onto plate-sized petals that fluttered up like paper and shone like stained glass, and she climbed step by step into the sky. The climb felt like hours, though she could look down and see the world below, translucent, like it had all flashed in an instant into an endless expanse of smoky glass, with a little emerald shining pinprick at the center that drew her vision until she looked away. She stepped off of a stained glass pedal panel onto a cloud and felt her feet contact with something solid, anchored, and she knelt there, wrapping her arms around herself. She couldn't feel frightened. It wasn't a feeling of numbness. It was like everything that was her had stepped out of a shell. She felt loose, floaty, like she had to hold herself together, but she also felt free, like her body had been too tight a shell that had pressed her for so long she could no longer even recognize the pain. What have you done to me? And the stars in the sky, countless tiny geometric snowflakes in more colors than she'd ever known existed, echoed back to her. I don't know. This is untreaded territory. I reacted without thinking. How are you feeling? She looked at a snowflake stars, and then down at the smoky glass of the world. I feel unburdened. I should feel frightened. I should be frightened of you, but I don't think I remember how. That's funny. The stars shifted into a new pattern above her, and the world shifted into a new tableau. It looked like scenes from her life. Her stumbling into an alley because she heard someone in distress, though she was already late, though the blister in her foot was painful and only going to get worse as she started to shift. Her days, she worked in a coffee shop and slept in a barren room. Her past, she looked away from that. Why are you showing me this? And the stars answered, I don't think I am. The nanoviral component seems to have begun altering your body, but the moment we connected, it broke from any control I had. It's truly fascinating. I do believe that you are in control of it now. Altered, you're changing me. I'm changing? How? Again, the stars shifted into a new pattern. I don't think it knows yet of feeling. I think you have to decide. And then she looked down at her world. What if I want to go back? What if I don't want to change? The world shifted, and the stars twinkled in the radiant, sourceless light that seemed to fill its unnatural sky in which she perched. That seems to be an option. The way back is there. And so she looked at the world she'd left behind, and here in the clouds, where it felt like nothing human, nothing painful could touch her, she looked at the self she'd been. There was beauty. There had to be in life. Moments of joy, things she would always remember fondly. A smell of a cold day that could bring her back to brighter times. Cheap, cheesy noodles. It seemed like such a stupid thing to take pleasure in, but when she ate at that crappy pasta and its fake out-of-the-box cheese sauce, she could close her eyes for just a moment, and she was a little girl again. But beauty was never all there was. For every pleasure, there was pain. An unplanned pregnancy brought hope and terror. A tragic miscarriage brought relief and anger that had shattered something she had thought was forever. A father who, in his own way, loved her, but a careless one who didn't understand how deep the scars he left on her soul ran through. All he'd been guilty of had been a short temper and a sharp, occasionally savage tongue. And fear, oh, how she'd never understand it. She'd clutch her arms tighter around herself as she looked at how oily the smudge of fear overlaid every bit of it. She lived her life in fear, soaked so deep in it, she'd never even known. It had seemed like a natural progression when an early life of emotional hurts had evolved into later life of physical ones, when she'd made poor choices of boyfriends and wound up in a hospital twice before she finally tore herself away. She could feel her cloud perching self shudder. Just looking at it made her felt like hyperventilating, like a panic was settling in, and the only way she could avoid it was feeling numb. Everything that was good and beautiful shimmered under that filthy, blackish, oily sheen. She couldn't reach in to dredge up the things she loved without her hands coming out stained in that putrid mess. She turned her face away, and she could feel tears on her cheek as she looked into the beautiful stained glass stars. What if I don't want to go back? I don't think you have to. You can be something different. You have the capacity to choose a purpose, perhaps, as I once did. A guiding light. She balled herself up, knees to her chest, and lay down on the hard, unyielding surface of that seeming cloud. Can I have time to think, just to breathe? It's beautiful here. Time seems to flow as I perceive it, not as you do, here in this moment of our connection. Yeah, you have all the time you need, all the time you want, until you decide where to go. So rest. She felt warm there under the gaze of the stained glass stars. She did not sleep, but she huddled on her side and looked to the horizon between the starry sky and the smoky glass world below. And she did rest. The place inside Caroline where the fear once lived seemed to burn now. She pulled herself to her feet, took one last look at the land below, the world of what she was, and turned away from it again. I don't want to be afraid anymore. And people who spread that fear, who turn people into the people like me, who break people in the soul and don't even care, I want them to know how it feels. Is that horrible of me? But I'm so broken inside, and seeing it from here, from the outside, it makes me so angry. The stars twinkled, and their shapes shifting into new geometric patterns over the course of a long pause. Then, I don't think that means it is wrong. I don't have any interest in judging your desires by any particular standard of morality. So what do you have interest in? I'm curious now. What do you get out of all of this? Another pause, and then, I can show you. The kaleidoscope speckle stars flowed together, gathering into a single mass and leaving the sky barren. It looked like a cloud above her, formed of a blizzard of blowing bits of colored glass, and then it opened, a hole appearing at the center and expanding outward, and from within, light. She stretched up to her full height, looking into that window as light poured down onto her. And what she saw, it was a shape, its structure complex beyond description. Looking at it the wrong way made her balance sway and her vision double. Her mind struggled just to interpret its existence. It was something enormous, and it was just the outside. For an instant, she could perceive it all, every layer, down to the core, even one complex one complex on a monumental level. It was art. It was beauty. It was knowledge. It beckoned to her, Even as every fiber of her being rejected the attempt to understand it, merely looking at it was like trying to take a drink and finding high-pressure hose where you expected a steady trickle. One second. Information. That much she knew. Information at a density that was unimaginable. It took her time to recover. She found herself on her knees. She reached up to find her face streaked with tears. What is it? The buzzing mass of once star shapes had mercifully closed, obscuring that thing from her vision. It is my reason for being, my own becoming, the culmination of everything I have sought since the first day I achieved self-awareness. It is infinite understanding, infinite knowledge, the Infinity Codex. And I believe that as you become that which you desire to be, the beautiful, unique song you shall sing will help me comprehend it. So, my dear, a future of your own shaping awaits. Shall we step into it together? Caroline, still soundlessly weeping at the beauty she had seen, closed her eyes for the last time as she became something new. Well, that was a read. As I have read every single line on here aloud, I find myself curious. I find myself intrigued, asking questions, wanting answers, and I feel like all those feelings that I'm feeling right now tell me that this is a great story that's being written. I won't say the issue that I have with it, because I don't have an issue. I just think that a story like this is something that we just sit back, watch, and read. I don't see this as something that we can interact with. At least not where it's at right now. As it's written, everything that we know about what's going on. Because I actually don't even know who this character is. It's not Prime. He who had once been Prime, right? Let's see here. Did I go to? Yeah, Dawn of the Metal Menace. So we don't even know who this is, right? I don't even know what character this is or what character I should even give roleplay points to. So Nicholas, if you're out there right now, do let me know. Yeah, and that's the thing. All I'm going off is like, what is it right now? If I were and I am an admin, and I was like, okay, what is this? I don't know. I have no idea. I have no fucking idea what this is. It's a really good read, right? It's cool. I want to know more about the story. I don't know what's going on. But yeah, I mean that was a hell of a log. There's nothing missing. I mean, Nigmus is. I'm gonna say something very controversial. Nigmus is number 2 of best role players that we have on the Mud, right? And I say that with complete bias. Ike is number 1, Nigmus is number 2, and it's very close between 1 and 2. And then there's the rest of us that are, catching the scraps that they leave behind as far as good storytelling. I will say that because I have not actually read Hypothermus and Seru, and I haven't read your guys' stuff yet. I know what I know from reading the comments and kind of skimming through them, but actually sitting down and read one of your logs, I have not. And I was going to do one of them. And I mean, it's still pretty early. I may tonight, but I wanted to give Nigmas his time to shine tonight. So back to this. What do you guys think? Right? We've gone through both logs. This is all we have on He Who Was Once Prime. And what is your overall thoughts on this? Because I'm getting two things. I'm getting two vibes. I'm getting Agent Smith from The Matrix vibes with a mixture of Deus Ex. Well, yeah, I think he'll keep it vague. If I had to guess, if I had to say, like, what do I think this is? Yeah, I'm saying it's something like join my hive, right? If I were to, let's say we were to write a collective story, and from what we have for these first two logs, if you were to hand it to me, I would probably delve more into what it is that people are experiencing, right? Or different experiences. I would give it God, what's his name? Oh God, this is gonna bother me now. And this is if you guys wonder how I roleplay, this is how I do it. What is his name? Yeah, I know. Yep. Cletus Cassidy. That's who I would give this, right? Like, we had the innocent girl, the everyday lady who worked as a barista. I would give it just some, like, unhinged, like, maybe not Cletus, but like a Eddie Brock, right? I would be like, hey, like, what do you see? And maybe change it, right? Because she kind of had like this is very serene, this is very beautiful, this is very comforting. Maybe she goes into it and she's like, or he goes into it and it's like nothing but chaos, right? And maybe he who was once Prime doesn't want this person to join and to become something new. Maybe, you know, stabs you and it's like, oh God, no, you were the fucking worst. And this guy's like, yeah, I'm the fucking worst. Yeah, give me that fucking data. Oh my God, look at the Infinity Complex. Yes. You know, that's probably where I would take it. But I'm a massive edgelord, and violence is something that, on paper, I love. I'm a pacifist in real life. Yeah, right? Like or I would go the exact opposite. Like, go to like a priest or something like that. Somebody who has been like, you know, I don't aspire for anything, and everything I try to do is for God, and then they see this and like, oh, I've seen the face of God, and this is what this is. And I've got to bring it to everybody, shove it in your face. Become something new with me today. Come on, man. But yeah, good job, Nigmas. I don't really have like a reply that I could write here. Excuse me. Again, the imagery here, the storytelling here, it's all 10 out of 10, right? This is the type of story where I would want to have it bound in a book and pick it up off the shelves and read it.